Okay. We will now call representatives of the Board of Corrections to testify. We will be hearing testimony from Jasmine Georges-Yilla, Melissa Cintron Hernandez, Danielle Ortega, and Katrina Blackman.
Please raise your right hands. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee and to respond honestly to council member questions? Noting for the record that all panelists responded in the affirmative, you may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Ayala and members of the New York City Council Committee on Criminal Justice. I am Jasmine Georges-Yilla, Executive Director of the Board of Correction. I'm joined today by BOC's Deputy Executive Director of Administration, Danielle Ortega, our Deputy Executive Director and General Counsel, Melissa Cintron Hernandez, and BOC's Assistant Executive Director of Monitoring, Katrina Blackman. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Since 1957, the board has exercised independent oversight of New York City's jails, despite operating as a relatively small agency with limited resources. The New York City Charter mandates the board to establish local regulations, investigate matters within the jurisdiction of the Department of Correction, and evaluate the performance of DOC and correctional health services. The board's minimum standards set baseline conditions that must be maintained for individuals in custody. Despite our financial constraints, we have remained steadfast in producing meaningful oversight reports. In the past year alone, we've published reports on the use of chemical agents in city jails, 3 death reviews, 2 borough-based jails progress reports, a monitoring quarterly report, an evaluation of the sick call process, an assessment of heat mitigation efforts, and a triennial review of the DOC grievance process. With additional resources, our impact could be significantly greater. The board's fiscal year 26 budget is $3.6 million, which is less than the $3.8 million budget we were allocated in fiscal year 25. 94% of the board's fiscal year 26 budget supports 30 authorized positions, 3 fewer positions than the 33 positions supported by our fiscal year 25 budget. The board currently has 26 active staff and 7 vacant positions. By the end of the fiscal year, we anticipate filling 6 of those vacancies, amounting to 32 active employees. City Council support has been instrumental in achieving this staffing level. Indeed, the Committee on Criminal Justice's $400,000 in fiscal year 25 allowed us to hire 3 critical positions: a special investigations coordinator, a correctional standards review specialist, and a research and compliance associate. We appreciate the Council's recognition of the board's role in transforming the jail system and the broader criminal justice landscape, and we look forward to your continued support. To maintain our existing staffing levels, the board seeks continued funding for the 3 previously mentioned positions funded in fiscal year 25 only. These frontline roles directly support the board's oversight work. Losing these positions would significantly reduce our capacity to monitor jail conditions, respond to incidents, and conduct critical research, especially as the population continues to grow. To effectively fulfill its oversight responsibilities, the board requires an additional $2.3 million and 20 positions in fiscal year 26, combining preliminary and executive funding requests. For the fiscal year 26 executive budget, the board has identified $1.3 million and 11 positions as essential. Additionally, the board has $1 million in unmet funding needs from the fiscal year 26 preliminary plan for strategic initiatives and staff development. These resources will enhance the board's ability to conduct data-driven reporting, meet City Council mandates, increase public engagement, and improve oversight of jail conditions. The board seeks funding for new needs across the agency. Monitoring staff are critical to BOC's mission. We have only 12 monitoring staff who conduct oversight in the jails, court pens, and hospital jail wards. With approximately 6,800 people in custody, Our monitoring capacity remains severely inadequate. While we expect to onboard 2 new monitors this year, further expansion is critical. Specifically, we seek funding for 3 new investigations and compliance monitors who will combine qualitative and quantitative methodologies to systematically assess compliance with the board's minimum standards. Additionally, 4 correctional standards review specialists are needed to improve the monitoring staff to incarcerated person ratio from 1 staff member per 565 individuals in custody to 1 staff member per 375 individuals in custody. Securing this additional funding is essential, as both lives and fundamental fairness are at stake. Additionally, the board must have sufficient research capacity to analyze the extensive data it receives from DOC and CHS. By the end of fiscal year 25, the board will have a team of 4 research staff, which will help to strengthen the agency's analytical capabilities. However, we need an additional 6 research staff members to further enhance our ability to evaluate DOC operations and ensure timely data reporting. Of the 6 new positions needed, there is a critical need for 3 senior research and compliance associates who will focus on analyzing compliance with specific chapters of the board's minimum standards. The other 3 additional requested research staff will ensure dedicated attention to Prison Rape Elimination Act compliance, assessing DOC's adherence to PREA standards, reviewing sexual abuse allegations, and tracking housing decisions for transgender individuals. The board also seeks additional legal staff to strengthen its appeals and special investigations units. To support our work on visit restriction appeals, which significantly impact incarcerated individuals and their families, we request funding for an appeals coordinator to expand our 1-person appeals unit. This is a critical need due to the high volume of appeals received and reviewed solely by BOC's appeals director. Indeed, between 2021 and 2024, our 1-person appeals unit received and reviewed approximately 350 visit restriction appeals. This year so far, the appeals unit has handled approximately 42 visit restriction appeals. BOC's Special Investigations Unit is a 3-person unit responsible for investigating various incidents within DOC's facilities. This includes deaths in custody, unresponsive persons in custody, fires, or any other incident that falls under the unusual incident category. The Special Investigations Unit would benefit greatly from a part-time doctor or nurse practitioner with the expertise to analyze medical records, give independent advice, and help lead the joint reviews with the CHS staff. Further, our IT team urgently needs a senior certified IT administrator to maintain operational stability of the board's systems. Without adequate database support, the agency faces significant operational challenges. A new human resources generalist position is also needed to improve staff support. Moreover, additional funding is needed to establish a training and development program, which is essential for the professional development and growth of all employees. As our staff located on Rikers Island continues to expand, funding for adequate furniture, seating, and workstations is critical. In 2023, due to construction on Rikers Island, the department relocated BOC staff to 3 trailers, only 2 of which are safely habitable for staffing operations. The move left the furniture allocated to BOC staff in poor condition. Thus, funding for clean and functional workstations, chairs, and conference room furnishings is essential. The board's work is essential to ensuring transparency, accountability, and humane conditions in NYC jails. However, our ability to fulfill our mandate is severely constrained by our limited budget. Receiving just 0.3% of the department's funding is inadequate given our responsibilities and the growing need for independent oversight. An established funding structure will enable the board to meet its mandate and effectively monitor conditions of confinement for the thousands of people in the department's custody. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify. I welcome any questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that testimony. The board has consistently testified that it's been understaffed, but the preliminary plan only included additional funding for one person, an EEO officer. How many positions would you need to be filled in order to be considered sufficiently staffed?
Are you asking if we didn't have any limitations or were asked to just prioritize? I think 60 staff members to start with. We really require a lot more monitors to be in the jails. Like I said, we only have 12 monitoring staff. We also require staff for the research unit, for the appeals unit. Just across the agency, we're very limited. We have 1 to 3 person units across our agency compared with the department's $1 billion budget. It's really inadequate in terms of the money that's given to the mandate for transparency and accountability that we have.
You mentioned that you have 7 vacancies as of today. How long have those vacancies been open?
I'm going to pass it to our Deputy Executive Director of Administration.
Thank you. So the board's vacancies, the 7 vacancies, are a mix. The board had some attrition last year, roughly 6 separations, but we were able to rebound, and so we only had 1 this year. We started FY25 with three additional positions, part of the funding that we received, which we allocated to the Special Investigations Coordinator, the Research and Compliance Associate, as well as the Standards Specialist. And so part of those vacancies were new as part of the beginning of July 1, and then another one of those vacancies is the EEO officer. So at least 4 of those vacancies are new to FY25. Okay.
I ask because when we bring this up to OMB, I want to make sure that they don't come back and say, well, they've had vacancies that haven't been filled for however long. Okay, and how much funding do you estimate you would need to hire these new positions? I think you mentioned a couple of numbers in the report.
We did mention a couple of numbers. So overall, from the FY21 preliminary plan in January, we have $1 million of unmet needs, which supports a number of initiatives, including 9 positions. For the executive plan itself, we asked for, I'm just having numbers, $1.3 million and 11 positions as essential. So for us, as a incremental stepping stone, $2.3 million and 20 positions in FY26 would get us on the way, and ultimately the 60 positions overall that our executive director mentioned would help us really reach our goals.
Perfect. In the last year, the board has received restorations and enhancements to fund at least 3 additional positions in fiscal year 25. What is the status of those positions?
Sure. So those positions are part of the 3 positions I mentioned that we started with in July. One of those positions are filled. That's a Special Investigations Coordinator. And then, happily we were talking about hiring an additional 6 by the end of the year. 2 of those positions, a Standards Specialist and a Research and Compliance Associate, will be onboarded in the next 2 months. And so those positions are just about almost filled.
Okay, perfect. The preliminary plan also shows that the board is currently budgeted for 33 full-time positions in fiscal year 25, yet the actual headcount in December was 25. Is there any other reason other than funding that the board has had a difficult time recruiting staff to fill these positions?
So the board has made additional efforts to filling these positions. We have heard the council talk about our vacancies in OMB as well. And so the really major push we have, those 6 additional staff that we anticipate coming on, are part of the efforts for the board to fill our vacancies and get us to where we need to be. The board has made efforts, including postings on Idealist, Indeed, and looking for other measures to widen our outreach in terms of recruitment.
That was my next question. Thank you so much for that. How have resources and staffing levels impacted your ability to fulfill your oversight role, including conducting and publishing reports on deaths in custody, PREA compliance, and other?
I think the lack of resources to be able to hire more staff has severely impacted us. We're not able to put out as much reporting and conduct as much audits as we would like, because for instance, our death investigations, our special investigations team who investigates deaths is only a 3-person team, and that's recent. It used to be a 2-person team. And so conducting audits and assessments of all of the board's minimum standards will take a dramatic increase in our staff to be able to do that sort of work, which the board's minimum standards envision doing, and I believe the council envisions that being our mandate. So I think we would need a significant increase in our staff and resources to be able to do that.
Has it historically been just 2?
The Special Investigations Unit?
Yes.
Do you want to speak to that? I'll turn it over to our General Counsel and Deputy Executive Director.
The unit started a few years ago, I believe in 2021, with a director. A year after that, we added a special investigations coordinator, and just this year, we onboarded an additional special investigations coordinator.
Okay. I mean, because the number of deaths reported in custody have increased substantially. I'm not sure how you're able to conduct your business without the appropriate level of staffing. Okay. I'm going to move on to oversight. At your October meeting, the board heavily discussed involuntary lock-ins, also known as deadlocking. What is the board doing to monitor the use of involuntary lock-ins, and is the monitoring occurring at all jails on an ongoing basis?
Yes, so the special investigations team that I just mentioned has taken the lead on our assessment of involuntary lock-ins. They actually just completed the tool and methodology that we're going to use for a broad assessment. And I can let our General Counsel and Deputy Executive Director speak more to it, but we are looking at it. It is a serious problem, and it's something that we continuously monitor and will be issuing a report on. But more research sources and more staff lended to issues like that would allow us to report out more immediately.
Okay.
Do you want to add anything?
So we expect the involuntary lock-in audit to begin in the coming weeks. It will focus on areas of mental observation, and it will focus on areas where young adults are. And like Executive Director Georges-Yilla mentioned, if we have more staff, we will be able to conduct an even more comprehensive and larger audit. But we will start with those areas, and as Executive Director Georges-Yilla mentioned, we will be issuing a public report with our findings.
Is that the first, I'm assuming this is not the first audit after the reports of the involuntary lock-ins was reported last year?
It would be the first public report issued publicly, because we want to do a comprehensive assessment. We want to be able to communicate all of the findings with the department and have them have an opportunity to speak to them and address them and to communicate what the resolution is and put that in the report as well. And come to a meeting of the minds of how this practice is going to stop.
Okay, so when do you expect the report will be published?
In the coming months. The audit will begin in the coming weeks. We expect it to take a couple of weeks, and then our research units and our special investigations units will analyze the data, come up with the findings, and issue the report.
Before the end of June?
Yes.
Okay.
We can safely say that.
Okay. Following the circumstances around the death of Robert Brooks at Mercy Correctional Facility and the multiple lawsuits following that alleged wrongdoing by the facility's CERT team, has there been any discussion around conducting a new review of the OC's emergency response strategy?
On the state level, the deaths that are...
At the OC, I mean, using that as an example, has that influenced your position on whether or not you should be conducting a review of the OC's emergency response strategy?
Well, whenever a death occurs on the island, our special investigation team goes out, they request information from CHS, from DOC, from the medical examiners, and evaluates all of the materials that we have to be able to produce an assessment of what procedurally went wrong and what procedurally can be done better. And so that's what our reports address. And it's based on what's written in the charter of what we're able to evaluate. And so if those are conversations that can be had with the council to figure out how we can expand what we're able to look into, then that's something that we're happy and would want to do.
So the board is not able to proactively have a conversation about preventative measures in light of things that have happened on the state level or other facilities?
So our special investigations team does not only look into deaths in custody, they also investigate unresponsive persons in custody. As part of that work, they do have proactive conversations with each facility's wardens. We share our findings, we share our memos, and we have a conversation about areas where DOC can improve. So those conversations have been happening since before the death of Mr. Brooks, and they will continue happening. And I will say that Mr. Brooks' death is illustrative of how important it is that the BOC have access to surveillance footage, and that is essential to all of our investigations of deaths in custody. And in the last 2 deaths, that's definitely something that has aided our investigations.
Just out of curiosity, how long does the surveillance footage, how long are they required to file it for, to keep a copy of it?
I don't have that on the top of my head. Katrina, do you remember?
You don't know?
Good afternoon, Katrina Blackman, Assistant Executive Director of Monitoring. So the footage that DOC preserves lasts an average of 90 days.
Would you agree that that's a short amount of time? Is that too short amount of, I mean, there's a lot of footage, so I could imagine that it becomes a little burdensome, but in cases where an incident has been reported, that footage should be preserved a little bit longer. Does that happen in those cases, in a case where we're talking about specific footage of an incident?
Yes, I believe it does.
It is extended.
I believe it does, yes. Okay. And the department, the way when a specific incident happens, specifically a death, they provide the video to us by uploading it to a specific folder, so that's where it lives.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'm going to move on to ICE on Rikers. Has the BOC taken a position or published any sort of statement regarding the mayor's plan to open an ICE facility on Rikers Island?
No, the board hasn't issued a public statement, but I would make the statement that the board would want to remind people of the board's minimum standard of non-discriminatory treatment. And I would hope that is at the top of people's mind when they're considering this. The standard is people in custody shall not be subject to discriminatory treatment based upon race, religion, nationality, sex, sexual orientation, gender, disability, age, or political belief. And it's imperative that any proposed policy change, including the potential addition of ICE on the island, be implemented with transparency, adherence to due process, and full consideration of its implications for all individuals in custody. As the independent oversight entity, the board will continue to monitor developments, access potential impacts on correctional operations and conditions, and engage with stakeholders to ensure compliance with the board's minimum standards. Our role is to uphold the principles of accountability, fairness, and due process in all matters affecting the city's jail population.
Are you in is the BOC in conversations with the administration about what ICE on Rikers would look like?
No.
No?
No.
They haven't disclosed any information?
No.
All right. Has there been any collaboration or communication at all on this before the announcement was made?
No.
Okay. All right. Are there any resources or additional funding requests that you have that were not included in this plan that you would like to speak on today?
So the $2.3 million that was outlined is our needs as of the moment, right? It encompassed what was unmet in FY25 and for FY25 preliminary, and what we recently submitted to OMB as part of the executive plan. The larger conversation, and I think the ongoing conversation for the board, is the expansion, some sort of baseline foundational funding for the board so that we can sustain and meet our goals. But for us right now, that's in hand submitted is the $2.3 million.
Okay. I'm going to move on to the borough-based jails. Will the Board of Corrections office be located, where would it be located once the facility closes?
Good afternoon again, Katrina Blackman. So we've been in communication with the department regarding our office space or accessible space to our staff as it shifts over to 4 correctional facilities off island. So in those communications, though there will not be a designated office space for the Board of Correction, they have agreed in principle right now to allow us to have access to office space where we may need to review DOC footage, have access to DOC computers and database systems, et cetera, et cetera. But I just want to be mindful of the fact that while we are at the Borough jails, and as we shift over there, that our continued presence there will be for oversight. So that means we will be actively touring while in those commands. So it's not necessarily going to be an office space for us per se, because we have to be throughout the housing areas and ancillary areas of those facilities.
Okay. Would you say, if assuming, in a perfect world, and I'm just using this as an analogy, if assuming that we were ready to open the new borough-based jails, next week, would the BOC determine that they are inadequately staffed to fulfill the mandate of oversight in all 4 facilities?
Yes.
What type of involvement has the board had in the borough-based jail process?
So over the past 2 years, actually even before that, we've held, in collaboration with the department and CHS recently, quarterly meetings. So every quarter we have a meeting with the department, CHS again recently, and we talk about the updates of said borough-based jails. So they can give us everything and anything providing to us expansion of housing area locations, recreation areas. They talk to us about, or they share with us updates about the hospitals and also visit areas, anywhere that people in custody, families can congregate in those settings.
Are you able to give recommendations?
We do give recommendations, and we do have, like I said, quarterly follow-ups with them. Our next quarterly meeting is scheduled for the end of this month. Okay. So we do provide them. We do provide them recommendations, and we also have our board members engaged in those conversations with them, so they can hear from an oversight lens what some of those recommendations could be.
Understood. All right, we don't have any other members present to ask any questions, and that's all the questions that I have for you. Thank you guys for coming and testifying, and we look forward to continuing to work together to get you a better budget.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I now open the hearing for public testimony. I remind members of the public that this is a formal government proceeding and that the quorum shall be observed at all times. As such, members of the public shall remain silent at all times. The witness table is reserved for people who wish to testify. No video recording or photography is allowed from the witness table. Further, members of the public may not present audio or video recording as testimony may be submitted, as testimony, but may submit transcripts of such recordings to the Sergeant-at-Arms for inclusion in the hearing record. If you wish to speak at today's hearing, please fill out an appearance card and with the Sergeant-at-Arms and wait to be recognized. When recognized, you will have 2 minutes to speak on today's topic: the Department of Probation, Department of Corrections, and Board of Corrections fiscal year 2026 budget. If you have a written statement or additional written testimony that you wish to submit for the record, please provide a copy of that testimony to the Sergeant-at-Arms. You may also email written testimony to testimony@counsel.nyc.gov within 72 hours of this hearing. Audio and video recordings will not be accepted. All right, Delvani Powell and Benny Bascio. You may begin.
Greetings, Chair and distinguished City Council members. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. I am Dalvin Powell, President of the United Probation Officers Association, UPOA, representing nearly 700 supervising probation officers, probation officer trainees, and probation officers assistants. Our members are predominantly women and people of color holding bachelor's and master's degrees. The New York City Department of Probation serves as an alternative to incarceration, providing critical services to the courts, including investigation reports and supervision supervision of probationers. Probation officers are a vital part of the criminal justice system, working to keep the community safe while giving people involved in the criminal justice system a second chance. Yet, despite our extensive responsibilities and educational qualifications, New York City probation officers are the lowest paid members in the law enforcement. According to a recent report from the New York City Controller's Office, the OP has the highest attrition rate in the city at 128.6%. From 2023 to December 2024, 369 employees left the department, of which our members were 103 resignations, 32 retirements, and 25 terminations. During the same period, only 210 people were hired, but only 57 probation officers were of that 57 that was hired. Meanwhile, in 2023, three academies were canceled, and probation officer training exams were canceled, and the class was postponed. Additionally, family court has been cut by more than 40%. Staffing crisis is negatively impacting both our members and public safety. Instead of prioritizing the hiring of probation officers, this administration has reversed years of evidence-based policies that supported lower caseloads and risk-based supervision. Now all levels of supervision, both family and adult, are being consolidated, leading to dangerously high caseload. Furthermore, under this administration, we are peace officers authorized to carry firearms and make arrests, yet we are not police officers. However, this administration continues to push us toward a policing model while disregarding our unique role in criminal justice. Please give me. Criminal justice system. Our shields are redesigned to resemble NYPD badges, erasing our distinct identity and creating serious safety concerns for UPA members. Unlike NYPD, probation officers do not receive unlimited sick leave, a 25-year pension, a 3/4 pay in the event of an injury, nor are we compensated at the same level. If the city insists on treating us as police officers, it must resolve our EEO case and restructure our salaries accordingly. All officers are now required to carry firearms, even those who have not handled a fire weapon in 20 years or more without the proper training. I'm almost finished. The academy, there's some points I'd like to make out. The academy has been extended to 5 months. We need more officers, and we need the academy to be doubled. Caseloads have been removed from our probation officer trainees. The commissioner disbanded the court liaison unit in family court against the objection of both the UPOA and the family court judges. This has resulted in delays in processing court orders, hindering case progression and affecting youth moving through the system. The commissioner plans to replace those CLOs with attorneys who will be paid more, despite the fact that the UPOA members have handled this work exclusively for over 50 years. Probation officers are being penalized for failing to manage excessive caseloads caused by staffing crisis. Despite our prior commitments, the commissioner refused to meet with the UPOA to discuss work flexibility. In short, because you have this testimony, the New York City Department of Probation is in worse shape than ever due to the mismanagement and lack of respect for our profession. Probation officers are not just alternatives to incarceration. We play a vital role in rehabilitation, public safety, supporting our communities. Our ability to build trust with probation clients and the courts are being undermined by chronic understaffing and poor decision-making. The continued failure to address this issue not only harms our members, but only jeopardizes public safety. We urge this council to take immediate action to address the staffing crisis, restore proper funding, and recognize the essential role of probation officers in the criminal justice system. I thank you, and I'm available for questions.
I'll ask after. Go ahead, Benny.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Ayala and the members of your committee. My name is Benny Basio Jr. I am the president of the Correction Officers Benevolent Association, the second largest law enforcement union in the city of New York. Our members, as you know, provide care, custody, and control of approximately 7,000 inmates daily. Our members are essential first responders who risk their lives every day to keep our city safe. For many New Yorkers, we are out of sight and out of mind, and often unfairly scapegoated for all the problems in our jails. The fact remains that New York City correction officers protect and save lives every day. We intercede while violent gang members are assaulting, slashing, and stabbing one another to protect the nonviolent inmates they are attacking. We recover weapons and drugs in our facilities on a daily basis. We prevent suicide attempts, and unfortunately, you never hear about the countless suicides we prevent. We administer Narcan to revive inmates who are overdosed from drugs. We ensure the inmates in our custody receive all the programming they are entitled to, escorting them safely to and from court or medical appointments. I want to provide a quick example of just one of the violent population my members must deal with daily. Recently, there was a story in the New York Post that reported on the violent rampage committed by one of our dangerous inmates, who assaulted 3 officers in the span of 1 week, including 2 female officers. Since he entered Rikers in 2022, he has attacked 45 correction officers and 3 civilians. His rap sheet includes 30 arrests, including charges of murder, assault, and robbery. Approximately 70% of our inmate population is facing violent felony charges just like this inmate. This is the climate my members work in every day. In the span of 1 year, from February 21st, 2024 to February 21st, 2025, there have been approximately 560 inmate assaults on correction officers. In addition to these attacks, there have been 122 spitting incidents, 225 splashing incidents, approximately 20 sexual assaults, nearly 170 slashings, and over 100 stabbings. During that same period, our officers recovered 600 items related to contraband, meaning weapons or drugs. Our officers continue to perform essential services and maintain safety and security in our jails, all while dealing with a significant increase in our inmate population that is also increasingly more violent. Our headcount is at approximately 5,000 officers. It is the lowest it's been in decades. This is why we continue to have one of the highest vacancy rates of any city agency. The city constantly asks us to do more with less. Over time, that takes a toll on even the boldest of my members. Safe staffing levels matter. Despite the city's efforts to recruit more officers, including the $3 million included in the mayor's preliminary budget proposal, those efforts are falling far short of their targeted goals. The department is not even close to keeping up with attrition. DOC must simultaneously focus on retaining the officers it has, which is our best chance to achieve safe staffing levels soonest. To achieve these goals, the city must make significant investments to support our officers and improve our working conditions instead of disciplining us for everything we do. Imagine getting punched in the face in an unprovoked attack by a person in custody and you getting suspended for defending yourself. This is what's happening to us. The specific use of the money allocated to the problem must be scrutinized more closely. For example, it's outrageous that the city has allocated billions of dollars in the capital budget to fund new borough jails that are nowhere close to being completed, while ignoring our dilapidated current jails and the men and women who work there every day. Therefore, I'm calling for an exception to be created in this budget to allow for capital expenditures to be made on Rikers Island. It is inhumane to leave my members to work below acceptable standards of habitability, simply because the city has an unrealistic idea of when Rikers can be closed. One major capital expenditure needs to be replacing countless dilapidated trailers on Rikers Island that so many of my members are forced to work from on a daily basis. For recruitment, add more financial incentives, including signing bonuses to enhance recruitment efforts, targeting advertising messaging towards military veterans, and engage with our untapped groups rather than marketing to the same pool repeatedly. For retention, enhanced usage of specialty pay, hazard pay, OT bonus incentives, and increasing the value of pension credits after full vesting, immediately updating and replacing all inoperable cells to keep officers and inmates safe from violent offenders. Allocate significant funding for upgraded sanitary and modern showers in locker rooms for our officers, which many are currently inoperable and in deplorable conditions. We also need the council support when it comes to providing home rule messages that will help pass legislation in Albany to enhance the pensions of our workforce, to incentivize, retain, retainment and establish a viable career path. Almost done. The city's budget is a reflection of the priorities set forth by you and your colleagues on the council. For far too long, your priorities have been focused solely on serving the interests of the inmates in our custody, even the most violent ones. If this committee is genuine about enhancing the safety of everyone in our jails, then this committee must prioritize the safety and security of my members as well. With that said, I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
I think that there's a universe where we can have both, where both inmates and staff can be in a space where they feel safe. But I do agree, I've been to the facility and I have seen the infrastructure has, continued to become worse. And I mean, it is a safety issue, and I get it. I wouldn't want to work there if it was me, if I'm being honest. You mentioned that the capital expenditures would be towards trailers that the officers are using now. What are they using the trailers for?
Trailers that they're in and mods that are outdated,
falling
apart.
What is the use of the trailer? Is that like for the intake when
There's different areas that have trailers.
Okay.
On the perimeters of Rikers Island, where Rikers Island security works.
Yeah.
In these booths, some of them don't have heat, AC in the summer, and then there's like holes in the floor on a lot of these trailers.
Okay. I have seen that. And in terms of the attrition, I know you guys have been going through it as well. And again, I think that there's a universe where we could have, both things be true. And how many officers would you say would need to be hired in order for the prison to be adequately supervised?
We believe about 4,000.
About 4,000? What is the ratio from officer to inmate now?
Right now, it's 7,000, approximately 7,000 in custody, and we have about 5,000 officers around. And remember, all officers don't work on every tour, right? You split that between 3 tours daily.
3 tours?
3 tours daily, yes.
Okay.
3 8.5-hour tours.
Okay.
So I know they talk about the ratio, but understand that those 5,000 aren't at work at the same time.
Yeah. No, but I also want to know, like, if an officer is in a specific unit, how many officers are assigned per unit, and for how many inmates are they required to supervise at one time?
It varies. It could be 1 officer on the floor per 60 inmates. That's in one of our dorm areas.
Okay. Is that the same in the units where we have maybe more violent individuals or people that?
No, those are dorms. There will be maybe 30 inmates in another
1 to 30?
housing area, or 50.
Okay. With 1
to 50,
officer?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Some of the more enhanced supervision housing you may have 2, 3 officers on the floor, but the way staffing levels are now, no.
What is the average salary starting?
Well, I think we're about 59, close to 60,000. That just started, I think, March 1st of this year.
Okay. And you mentioned that the city continues to, I guess, try to attract the officers from like the same pool. You mentioned you maybe offering some incentives. Is there any other recommendation that you would?
I mean, I think we need to go to military bases to try and get veterans to come on the job. I think starting younger, maybe in junior high school, to kind of like talk to the students and let them know that there's a career path there. We're in dire needs right now, and the problem is that they made the job so bad for us, right? Because us and the people in custody are suffering behind Rikers. And as you know, 85% of my members are Black and brown. Mm-hmm. And it begs the question as to why we're being treated that way. You know what I mean? And I think that we stopped promoting the job to our friends and family because things got so bad for us. We're working 150 hours a month of overtime. I have single parents on this job. And they're spending so much time at work that the streets are raising our children. And that becomes another vicious cycle in itself.
That's a problem.
And 65% of my members come from the city of New York, the same neighborhoods that the incarcerated individuals do.
Yeah. No, that's problematic. And again, I appreciate your testimony here today. And, you know, I know what it's like to be on both sides. I've had family members that have worked in corrections, and I have had, you know, family members and friends that have been at, you know, in Rikers as inmates, and it's not good either which way. And we need to ensure that there's, you know, proper staffing ratios so that everyone feels safe and that the conditions there while we're there, because even, you know, even if you were in agreement with the borough-based jails, they're not going to happen for, you know, for a number of years. And we've already been having this discussion for quite some time, so there should be temporary accommodations that are made to ensure that there's, you know, proper heating and, you know, just the basic essentials for individuals that are spending most of their day doing, you know, two tours and not having to spend, you know, time at the facility. So I really do appreciate that, and I hope that you feel that, you know, we will work hard. We're trying to balance and ensure that there's equity while there's also fairness in the system.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And we know the borough-based jails are just years away. We just don't want to be forgotten about now.
Absolutely.
We believe that investments need to be made
Absolutely, I
in us
agree.
now. Yeah,
I agree.
that's our concern. And I mean, the borough-based jails top out at 3,400 capacity. And right now we have 7,000 in custody. So nobody's been able to answer the question, what happens with the remainder of people in custody when you go to that system?
Yeah, well, I think we stop incarcerating individuals that are severely mentally ill and put them in, you know, appropriate spaces. But thank you for that, Benny. Okay, yes.
Can I add? As you know, probation is the alternative to corrections. And one thing I wanted to bring to your attention, because I'm listening to Benny talk, right? And I failed to mention that with these changes, my members are now working different tours. We used to be Monday through Friday, right? Okay. And we used to make those judgments whether we wanted to go on the weekends or at night or whatever. So now we got, my members are working, they're working late night shifts twice a week, and they work on the weekends. So also, just like corrections, it's very difficult for us to balance our family work life. Probation has changed significantly. So people think that because somebody's on probation that their behavior changes because they're no longer with corrections or they're no longer with the police department, and that's farther from the truth. We're having the same issues, like the commissioner mentioned. We had a slicing, we had a probationer get sliced by another probationer in Queens. That's showing that the trajectory of probation has changed significantly. Our jobs are getting more and more dangerous. And we're constantly having, you know, the neons, you heard about the neons? Mm-hmm. We're having constant altercations at the neons, gang violence, where our members have to interject and stop, break up these fights on the regular. See, these things that you don't hear about at probation. So we have a need, just like anybody else in corrections, anybody else in police department. If you're hiring, let's do the math. If you're hiring more police officers, which they just did, and you're hiring more correction officers, you're going to need more probation officers. If you're talking about putting jails in the and in the communities, and Benny just said, "Where's the rest of them going?" They're coming to us. They're coming to us. And also, and then earlier they mentioned about these caseloads being at 25 caseloads and 45 caseloads. That's further from the truth. I have my members doing the research for me, and I can tell you right now, we have blocks of areas, and primarily the heaviest caseloads is in Brooklyn, Bronx, and Queens. And we have members with 100 cases. And if you think about it, if you're losing people,
Yeah.
how could you say the caseloads are the same? It's highly impossible. So just like
So there's one officer per 100?
we have one officer, yeah, we have them one per 100, one per 70. And it depends, like he was saying, it depends on your assignment, where you're at, how your caseloads are going to look. And when they took away, and then when she took away vital titles like the court liaison officers, those officers played a vital role in the courts. Like I said, we work for the courts, but for over 50 years, we had these officers in the courts because they know the job. They talk the talk. She's a supervisor for the court liaison officers. And for her to remove them from the family court is devastating. If you get a chance, talk to the judges and how this has really stagnated and paralyzed the system. Mm-hmm. And every role that we play in the criminal justice system is very vital. We're in the paper again, twice in one day. That's unheard of. Mm. The mismanagement of this agency is detrimental to my members, and most importantly, the community at large. And one more thing before I close. When we keep shifting probation officers like this, it affects our clients.
Yeah.
it affects our clients, and they get frustrated. And every time you turn around, there's a new probation officer. Understand, we have to establish relationships with these people, long-term relationships with them. So at the end, the whole community at large, their community corrections with the gates, we're community corrections without the bars. So you look out the window, that's my jail, and we need the help.
Do you have, how many vacancies do you have?
Right now, we have 582 probation officers, and I'm not really sure. It's probably over 300 vacancies. If you ask me how many more probation officers we're going to need,
yes.
After listening to Commissioner Holmes today, with all these additional initiatives that I did not know all about, we probably need to go back to 2,000, like we used to be. Because if we're going to carry the caseload of, which, you know.
What is that? What is the starting salary?
Recently, we just negotiated a contract, and our new starting salary went from $42,000 to $61,000. But I don't see the advertisement. I don't see the new advertisement of the new job salary. And I keep asking them, when are you going to put the new job announcement out so that we can start attracting more people? And another thing I'd like to add, 5 months of training is fine once I see what the curriculum is. I really don't know what it is. But every 5 months, twice a year, it's not going to work. Other administrators understood the necessity of overlapping the staffing because we have a high attrition rate. So we've been saying through labor management meetings, and we've been giving advice on how to do this. Prior administrations knew to double up on staff on the classes because it can be done, and it has been done. Mm-hmm. We had one group doing fundamentals while another one was doing peace officer training in another place. It has been done. So we are constantly, I'm not a president of a union that makes complaints. I give recommendations because I can, because I've done the work. I'm a supervisor, civil service title, so I know what I'm talking about. I've worked in family court and adult services, so I'm very well-rounded, and I'm confident in what I'm saying. So we're constantly giving recommendations that's falling by the wayside.
Yeah. I was going to ask about the firearms.
Yes.
You mentioned that the training is...
So what's happening is, okay, firearms is at the discretion of the commissioner, all right? But we do have a policy where officers that's hired at a certain point doesn't necessarily have to carry, but the state mandates require that we qualify every year. There's units in probation, supervision, field units, yes, they should be armed because they're going into the homes, right? They're doing consent to searches, they're pulling out weapons, they're pulling out drugs and fentanyl, so we're exposed to a lot of stuff. Then there's units that's non-field investigations, there's intake unit. Do they have to carry a firearm? No, they really don't because they're the front end, right? But, like I said, it's at the discretion of the commissioner, but they don't have to. They really don't have to carry. But that's her decision.
But the new requirement is that they do.
Now she wants them all armed because of what happened in Queens and then the constant altercations between the gangs coming up in those neons and stuff now. But they don't have to be armed.
I don't.
They really don't. And the other thing is, for those who are being armed now, we have people that's in those units that haven't touched a gun in over 20 years. So I'm saying to them, if you just have to arm them, have them trained properly. Get them reacquainted with carrying a firearm because I went without a firearm for 20 years, and then about 2 years ago, they sent me back to the range, and I'm supposed to go pick up a gun whenever. But I went through a 3-day training. I got familiarized with the gun. Now they're putting my members in the requalification for 1 day and expects for them to be familiar with the guns. And then they're being penalized because they're not used to it, they have their anxieties, and they're being penalized. I just had one that was suspended. And like Benny was saying, I got members being suspended and brought up on charges for a situation that this administration created. And it's just very sad. And the one thing I want to add too, we're predominantly females of color. And I'm gonna say it out loud, nobody get offended. But if we was predominantly men and white, would this be happening to us? And I've written to the mayor, I've met with deputy mayors, and nothing has been done yet, and I'm very concerned.
Yeah. All right, thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next panel is Megan French Marcellus, Nadia Shate, Ronald F. Day, Meg Egan, it's so little, Amanda Berman, and on Zoom, Christina Graham. You may begin.
Thank you so much. My name is Megan French Marcelin, and I am appearing on behalf of the New York City Alternatives to Incarceration and Reentry Coalition. In New York City, our dependence on mass incarceration is at once a manifestation and a driver of systemic inequities that have devastated neighborhoods across all 5 boroughs. And yet, this city is fortunate enough to have an ecosystem of service providers who are doing the backbreaking work of resourcing communities most devastated by mass criminalization. This ecosystem of providers who work in front-end ATIs and back-end reentry services has been a model nationwide for how you get to a more equitable, human-centered justice system. And we do this work with pennies on the dollar that the city allocates to the vastly over-resourced Department of Correction. Decades of research demonstrate that ATI programs are more effective than incarceration at improving public safety outcomes, decreasing the chance of future convictions, improving employment rates, and generating significant savings for taxpayers. And yet, I sit before you today representing the aforementioned ecosystem, who are now staring down $12 million of cuts. We know that the expansion of ATIs and reentry services alone will not decarcerate Rikers. However, these programs are some of the most meaningful mechanisms we have to envision and scale a more human-centered approach to public safety. The current administration, as well as the City Council, should be leading the charge to invest in them. And in closing, I will say that we are requesting a restoration of the cuts and an increase from City Council of $2.4 million in discretionary funding. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Nadia Chait, the Senior Director of Policy and Advocacy at CASES, and we are proud to be a member of the ATI Reentry Coalition and second the request that Megan just made. We operate a range of alternative to incarceration programs that served over 1,800 people last year, keeping those individuals from the harms of incarceration while improving safety in our communities and ensuring that folks have the services that they need. We heard from DOC and DOP today about all of the challenges that they face in serving folks with mental health challenges, and they're not good at it. But providers like us are. And if we were resourced adequately, we could serve those individuals. So I want to highlight one of our clients, a man named Alfred. Alfred's in our Nathaniel Alternative to Incarceration program, which is an intensive mental health treatment approach. Alfred, before he came into our program, spent 2.5 years in the state psychiatric facility at Kirby being restored to competency. This is a person who has struggled with his mental health for a very long time without receiving the services that he needed. And he entered our program on a violent felony charge. In his time in our program, we've been able to increase his housing stability. Alfred is now regularly taking his medication. He successfully completed his court case and has remained engaged in our services on a voluntary basis and is now looking at enrolling in high school equivalency classes to finish his degree and joining a mental health clubhouse to support his well-being day to day. This is the kind of transformation that we can achieve when programs like ours are resourced instead of a correctional system that is unable to, not only unable to provide mental health care, but unable to maintain the basic safety of the people that it serves. And so we urge the council to restore the $3.8 million for ATIs, the $8 million for reentry, and to add in the discretionary dollars, $2.4 million for ATI programs. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Meg Egan, and it is my great honor and privilege to lead the Women's Prison Association. I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify today. Throughout its 180-year history, WPA has been a force for change, challenging systemic inequities that criminalize and marginalize women, particularly Black and brown women, at disproportionate rates. For these women, incarceration is not merely a consequence of a single event, but a result of compounding systemic failures: poverty, housing instability, trauma, and lack of meaningful opportunity. The harms and failures of Rikers Island are real, and the cost to families, communities, and the city is immeasurable. Mothers are separated from children, communities lose contributors, the cycle of inequity perpetuates and deepens. But what if there was a different way? A way that prioritized prevention, provided support, and treated justice as an opportunity for restoration rather than punishment. WPA envisions that path forward. By meeting women where they are, WPA fosters trust, connection, and agency, empowering each individual to reclaim her future. Rooted in New York City, WPA serves as a lifeline for women navigating the criminal legal system, working alongside them to dismantle the structural barriers that have kept them in the margins for too long. There are just over 400 women held on Rikers Island right now. We believe that together with our partners, we can develop the service and support to make the community the public safety-minded default rather than Rikers Island. And to realize that vision, the city must not just restore the funding currently cut, again, $3.8 million from ATI programs and $8 million from reentry, but expand these essential and effective programs. Our work will center on the following priorities to develop this infrastructure. I will very quickly close. We are focused on restoring the ATI Reentry Coalition funding, funding to support creating a practical pathway to make incarceration obsolete in New York City, expanding clinical services for women in the community, and expanding robust discharge planning services. Thank you.
Good afternoon, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Ronald Day. I'm a senior vice president at the Fortune Society. I've been with Fortune for over 10 years, managing various units, including discharge planning, employment services, education, our research and policy centers as well. I also oversaw Fortune's programming in the city jails that was terminated in June 2023. My professional experiences, as well as my personal experience serving 1 year on Rikers Island and 15 years in state prison, inform my understanding of the critical importance of investing in alternatives to incarceration, reentry services, and supportive housing, because these help reshape lives and contribute to community safety. The Fortune Society has been around for 56 years. It is committed to supporting successful reentry and providing alternatives to incarceration. Our mission aims to strengthen the fabric of communities by instilling a belief in the power of individuals to change. Through programs shaped by the experience of our participants, we help rebuild lives. We also seek to change minds through education and advocacy to foster a fair, humane, and rehabilitative justice system. In fiscal year 24, we served over 13,000 individuals. To fulfill the legal mandate to close Rikers, City Council must secure a budget that prioritizes community safety and invest in effective ATI reentry services and supportive housing. Right now, the administration is calling for a cut of $3.8 million in ATI and $8 million in reentry. And Fortune is asking City Council to work with the administration to ensure that the programs, ATI, reentry, and supportive housing are not actually decreased, but increased. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Good afternoon, Deputy Speaker Ayala and committee staff. My name is Amanda Berman. I'm the Senior Director with our court reform programs at the Center for Justice Innovation. At our organization, we develop and implement creative approaches to public safety across our city and across the entire spectrum of justice system involvement, from community-based prevention efforts to pre-arraignment diversion, pretrial supervision, and alternatives to incarceration. But not only do we provide these services, we also evaluate them to identify what works and to share best practices across the field. So after nearly 3 decades of doing this work in court and community, we know what works. And it is also what all of my esteemed colleagues up here have already shared, who are in this work beside us. Achieving true safety requires sustained investment in community-driven solutions that are focused on prevention and fair intervention. For the upcoming fiscal year, we're seeking support in response to a growing need in the following areas. First, our ATI programs continue to connect individuals to the vital resources that they need to reduce recidivism and support reintegration, and also save taxpayer dollars. These programs also play a critical role in our collective goal of closing down Rikers Island. I want to point for a moment specifically to our Brooklyn Mental Health Court. That program provides rigorous treatment and monitoring to individuals who are living with serious mental illness, who are facing felony charges, and but for our program would often be jail or prison bound. It is precisely the population that we've been talking about for so long, who are being failed by our jail system, but can be safely monitored and serviced in the community if the right resources are in place. In our program, we are currently managing a caseload that has doubled if I may, I don't have much more, thank you. It has doubled in the last 4 years without the accompanying funds. Funds are urgently needed in order to hire more staff to bring down caseloads, better serve our participants, and also to reduce the backlog of people who are sitting on Rikers Island waiting to be evaluated and accepted into our program. Second, our programs that are addressing gender-based violence, as we know, are especially vulnerable during these times. Our programs have seen a rise in female-identifying participants in the justice system. And to meet those needs, we're hoping to develop a new initiative within our Queens and Staten Island sites called Empower Her, which will be designed to provide targeted support for that population. Lastly, we seek funding to sustain our diversion programs that work to provide accountability while also reducing the justice system's footprint. And these include citywide initiatives like Project Reset, Driver Accountability, and our Bronx DWI initiatives, all of which are a critical part of bringing restorative solutions into the court system and reducing financial barriers. Thank you so much for your time and your indulgence, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Christina Graham will be joining us virtually. Christina?
You may begin.
Thank you. Thank you, members of the Criminal Justice Committee, for the opportunity to provide testimony today. My name is Christina Graham, and I am a mitigation specialist for the Osborne Association, specifically Court Advocacy Services, CAS, providing defense-based advocacy for indigent clients that have cases in New York City's 5 boroughs, Westchester, Rensselaer, Columbia, Albany, and Greene counties. As part of the CAS team for the last 6 years, I get to know individuals beyond their charges and develop an individualized plan to address the root causes of their involvement with the criminal justice system. This approach promotes public safety while saving public dollars spent on pretrial detention and prison sentences. Last fiscal year, CAS prevented 1,411 years of incarceration at a cost savings to the city and state of $162 million. To understand our impact, I want to tell you about Miss Miller's case that was referred to us by a defense attorney. She had 3 active cases in 3 different boroughs, and they were all for the same charges, petty and grand larceny. She was facing a potential sentence of 2 years for each case to run consecutively, amounting to a potential 6 years of incarceration. Miss Miller was in her late 50s without stable housing, battling long-term drug addiction coupled with unresolved trauma, a lack of natural support in the community, and constant involvement in the criminal legal system. By that point in time, she accrued over 45 arrests for the same charges she presented with. Through an extensive interview process, I learned the intimate details of Miss Miller's life, which detailed extensive trauma from childhood all the way through adulthood. These interviews were the first time she had a chance to tell her life story. Viewing her story through a public health and social work lens, including our legal understanding, CAS concluded that Miss Miller's constant arrests were not a disregard for the law, but a desperate plea for community support. It was evident that she had complex mental health and drug addiction issues that were triggered by her past trauma. I wrote a comprehensive and in-depth report that was accepted by the court, and we secured Miss Miller a 2-year sentence.
Thank you. Your time expired.
I'm sorry?
Can you wrap up?
Yes,
okay.
2 more sentences. Last year, she returned to the community and CAS connected her to services. Currently, she's engaging in an internship, a part-time position, receives weekly addiction and therapy services, and we're moving out the shelter in her own apartment in the next 30 days. And this is just one of many cases. So we urge City Council to expand support and fund, not cut, investments in ATIs and reentry services. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Guys, well, thank you guys for coming to testify. I don't have any questions because I think you guys are all fantastic and are doing a really great job. I'm very familiar with all of the services that you're providing in our communities, and I want to say thank you because I know it isn't easy, and obviously you know that the City Council has been championing a lot of the ATI programming, and so we will continue to do that. Thank you. Our next panel is Helen Skipper, Darren Mack, Jamil Wright, Glenn Williams, Tammy Reed, and Edwin Santana. You may begin. Oh, do we have everybody? Hold on. Helen? That's okay. You're Helen? Wait, hold on. I'm just trying to make
Yes,
sure everybody's
sorry.
here. Okay, Darren. I see Darren. Jamil?
Helen Skipper.
And no, I'm just going over the names. Glenn Williams? Okay, wait. So who's Jamil Wright? Okay. Glenn Williams? That's you. Tammy Reed? And Edwin Santana? Okay, no worries. Thank you. You may begin. Whichever one you want to begin first, go ahead.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to speak. My name is Helen Skipper. I sit here today not only as the Executive Director of the New York City Justice Peer Initiative, but also as a member and Vice Chair of the New York City Board of Corrections. As a member of the board, a position you nominated and appointed me to, I'm here to speak, shed truth to light, and urge you to divest funding from the Department of Corrections and its home base of Rikers Island. Additional funding is a complete waste of resources that are desperately needed for housing, treatment, education, and other investments. It is time to use our precious resources to fund the things that work. Funds diverted from this cash cow that is perpetually hungry could be used to decriminalize behavioral health. Where is it okay for Rikers Island to be the largest behavioral health facility in the country? A facility that does not afford the necessary treatment and support needed. Diverted funds can be spent on housing such as GIST and other supportive housing modalities. We need more intensive, mobile, and forensic assertive community treatment teams to counteract the behavioral health crisis our city is currently in. The closed Rikers Island plan also promised a new community-based mental health safety net. The administration has clearly fallen short of that goal. The number of people in Rikers diagnosed with serious mental illnesses has increased more than 60% since January 2022. These teams incorporate those of us with lived experiences who have successfully navigated these traumatic systems and stand at the ready to support and mentor individuals so that they too can be the best they can be without interception from the criminal justice system. We need to restore funding to the Office of Criminal Justice for ATI and reentry programs. We somehow seem to forget it that if we keep incarcerating folks, these very same folks are going to come home eventually. And to what I ask, we need to go further, higher, and deeper and increase discretionary funding for alternatives to ATIs. Recidivism is very real in this great city, and I can definitely speak about this. I'm almost finished. From a personal lived experience view, as I cycle on the hamster wheel of recidivism for 25 years, suffering from mental illness and addiction. I am not going to read the rest of this, but I want to let everybody know that I have invited you to my Justice Peer Conference, where you can see firsthand the organizations that should be receiving funding, the good work we're doing, the work that we're doing that is literally outpacing and outlasting what DLC is doing. Please, I urge you all to look to fund the smaller organizations that are crawling around, boots on the ground, hands in the mud. We are crawling around. This is where the funding needs to go to. Thank you very much for the additional time.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for allowing me to testify. I think I got it. Thank you. My name is Tammy Reed. I'm testifying on behalf of Freedom Agenda and a member of the campaign to close Rikers. I want to start off by saying that as a taxpaying citizen, I am astounded by the fact that we are paying a little over $500,000 per year to house one individual on Rikers Island. I'm a senior citizen. I live off of less than $25,000 a year with minimal outside assistance and have never missed a meal. I have adequate housing, utilities paid, and so forth. We can do better than this. It is my understanding that the mayor has proposed that $2.87 billion be spent on jail operations in fiscal year 2026. And if I'm understanding the budget correctly, this figure is leading up to the time that Rikers should be closed by law, August of 2027. I'm proposing today that this figure be adjusted to be in line with Rikers closing. I'm requesting that instead of passing this over-bloated budget, that the City Council adjust the budget to reallocate funds to areas where we truly do need funding, such as mental health, housing, and community services. It just baffles me as to why we keep continuously dumping money into a facility like Rikers Island that is a disgrace and stain on our city, instead of addressing the real issues that's plaguing our cities, mental health, housing, and so forth. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that we're in trouble, and that to continuously fund essentially a non-functioning organization such as Rikers is not the answer. And to give you a clear understanding what I mean by non-functioning, my son was incarcerated at Rikers. He's a severe hemophiliac. Documentation was submitted to court by Long Island Jewish Medical Hemophilia Center stating what his disease is and how to treat it, which is an infusion every other day or every 2 to 3 days. Did Rikers follow the procedure? No. Unfortunately, during this 2-year period while my son was there, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. After surgery and as I was preparing for chemo, I was warned to be vigilant about my environment. And unfortunately, because Rikers is filthy and unsanitary, I had to cut off visits to my son. Just one more sentence. I would like to see an additional $39.8 million to be addressed to the housing and mental health needs. More funding for the justice-involved supported housing, intensive mobile treatment teams, forensic assertive community treatment teams, and monies for a new crisis respite centers in compliance with Local Law 118/2023. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker Ayala and council members, for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Darren Mack, and I'm a co-director of Freedom Agenda, and we're one of the organizations leading the campaign to close Rikers. Our members have both experienced Rikers and been impacted by crime, and they know what works to create real public safety. It's things like housing, healthcare, work opportunities, mentorship, and safe community spaces. While Mayor Adams has said he wants to close the pipelines that feed Rikers, his proposed budget would do the opposite. We're calling on the City Council to ensure that the adopted budget paves the way for New York City to deliver on the legal and moral obligation to close Rikers. Instead of allocating $150 million to hire 1,100 more correctional officers, the city should invest in helping New Yorkers thrive, including allocating an additional $39.8 million to meet critical mental health and housing needs, restoring $11.8 million in planned cuts to the Office of Criminal Justice for alternatives to incarceration and reentry programs, restoring proposed cuts to the Board of Correction for jail oversight and increasing their head count, allocating $3 million for DEP to begin a master plan for the implementation of the renewable Rikers vision. We know our city can afford these investments because the mayor plans to spend nearly $150 million to hire 1,100 more correction officers this year, increasing DOC uniform head count from approximately 5,900 to 7,060. For the past 3 years, vacancies have been growing, millions of more money has been growing in DOC budget, and they will not be filled. These vacancies will not be filled. The administration has tried to justify the out-of-control spending at DOC by saying that they expect the jail population to rise, but it's rising because of their warped budget and policy priorities. DOC recently added beds to already crowded dorms at Rikers out of concern they would exceed capacity. Both advocates and uniformed staff spoke out against this. What if the city treated preventive investments with the same urgency? This administration is choosing to budget for more harm and incarceration instead of making the investments that could prevent it. This city council has reaffirmed its commitment to closing Rikers, and that commitment must be backed up by this year's budget. We will submit, along with this testimony, a full budget analysis that outlines the amendments needed in fiscal year 26 budget to pave the way to closing Rikers and passing a people's budget. Thank you for your participation.
My name is Glenn Williams.
Could you make sure that your mic is on? The light is red?
I gotta press the button. All right,
Yeah,
testing. All right, my name is Glenn Williams. I'm 25 years old. Thank you for having me here today. I'm a victim of the system, but also benefited from programs. I grew up in the Bronx with a single mother and 8 siblings. I was always taught to be polite and treat others with dignity. But like many other young men in this city, I found myself caught in the system. facing consequences for mistakes I made in my youth. When I was 20 years old, I was sentenced to 3 years of probation after serving 45 days for a misdemeanor. The harsh reality of the court system and probation easily pushed me further into a life of frustration and failing. Between being denied by employers, being homeless, and living in the fear of being arrested again, I felt defeated. The extended probation kept me in a state of constant stress, fear that I could easily be brought back behind bars. I grappled with the difficulty of not getting a job because of my record. For 3 years, I was rejected from every employer I applied to. The frustration of being denied over and over again chipped away at my self-worth, making me feel discouraged and mess with my character. I continued to have encounters with police where they would use excessive force. I experienced firsthand and witnessed how the police are overly aggressive with black men, with black and brown men in my community that look like me, and how they treat us badly growing up in our neighborhoods by physically and sexually harassing us and then claiming it's a part of their job. What helped me move forward was my involvement in numerous programs and resources that changed my perspective. These re-entry programs such as Youth Rap, Health People, Bronx Connect, Youth Represent, Rosboro, and Drive Change were all life-changing for me. There also needs to be more resources for housing. When I was living in the shelter, I often had interactions with police simply because I was homeless or because I would have to carry my belongings with me everywhere. This pulled me back into the system and interrupted the progress I was making in building my life. Young people like me should not have to get arrested to be on probation to get access to programs. Instead, money should be redirected to programs that provide actual support, guidance, and give everyone a chance for a future. Endless punishment for young people needs to end.
And look at you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You are what happens right when we invest in the proper programming and services.
Yes, definitely.
To help support our youth. Thank you so much for being a voice for so many in our communities that are probably terrified to come and do what you just did. It's very brave to tell your story, and I really, I'm super proud of you.
Thank you.
For being here today.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you guys so much for coming. Our next panel is Norma Gaines, Damon Gilbert, Mei-Ling Eng, Judy Lay, Vic Lee, Kashul Chala, and Tammy Meltzer. I'm gonna call out your names just because I want to make sure that everybody that I called. Norma? Okay. Damon, Mei-Ling, Judy, Vic, Kashul, Tammy Meltzer? No? Okay. You may begin. Just make sure that the light is on. Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. My name is Norma Ginez. I'm a single mother. I have 3 children. 2 of them are which of the spectrum. And my children's father is a formerly incarcerated individual. He told me about the horrific stories that he shared with me 15 years ago about how his time in Rikers was. And just hearing the young man's story right now to get me a little bit emotional because of the fact that, living in the Bronx, I used to live in Long Island. I never had experienced or known of anybody that experienced Rikers or just injustice that are generally done in the 5 boroughs of this New York City. And so I just wanted to express that, I wanted to say that, to defund like Rikers right now. We need more funding for organizations like, for example, what my baby's father was involved in, which was Osborne, yes, association, and he took advantage of that program. He was part of, he was able to get his construction license and all this OSHA testing, and it helped him. They provided him with housing, and I feel that there's more success stories out there through this particular organizations and more organizations like that. And I would really appreciate it if we can try to have more funding for that. Again, thank you so much for your time.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for letting me testify. My name is Damon Gilbert. I'm an Equal Justice Fellow at New York Lawyers for the Public Interest. We're a civil rights nonprofit organization that has been advancing environmental, health, and disability justice through community lawyering and
Damon, could you put the mic a little bit closer to you?
Oh, yeah,
because you're a little bit softer spoken. Yes.
How's that?
There you go.
Sorry about that. Okay, I'll just start here. So NILP is a civil rights nonprofit organization. We advocate for environmental health and disability justice through community lawyering, and we've been partnering with the private bar for over 50 years. I'm also here to talk about Rikers. It's been an environmental injustice for as long as it's existed. The penal colony is notorious for its poor air quality. It's literally built on a landfill, as well as being situated by multiple major polluters. It's incredibly unhealthy to both the population, those who work there, and the surrounding Bronx community. On top of that, it's infamous for being the most dangerous jail to be inside of in the nation, most likely. Despite that, and despite the fact that it's being required to close by 2027, this administration seems unconcerned with taking the necessary actions to enforce the law to shut down Rikers. And we see that through the DOC's actions and the proposed budget of $2.87 billion for jail operations for 2026, that the prioritization of mass incarceration over other vital services for New Yorkers is still in place. Far from actualizing the vision to close Rikers, the DOC seems intent to keep perpetuating these environmental injustices, as well as the human rights crisis that is currently ongoing there. In the past year alone, New Yorkers Chima Williams, Manuel Luna, Roy Savage, Charisma Jones, Anthony Jordan, and Ramel Powell have all lost their lives due to the horrific conditions there. Despite the serious threat to human life and dignity, Rikers costs over $500,000 per person to hold there each year, making it the most expensive and least effective tool that we have to protect our community's safety. In conclusion, we just want to support our peers at the Freedom Agenda who are fighting to close Rikers, who have come up with concrete, serious recommendations to fix the budget and reduce the amount of funds allocated towards the DOC and hopefully reallocate them towards desperately needed services like housing, mental health treatment, education, and other investments that are critical to the safety of all New York residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wan Xi-Marilyn Wu, and I speak on behalf of the Syria who live in Chong Park who are here with me today. They live right next door to the south side, and I want to share some of their feelings. Thank you. The past 2 years had not been easy. There's always noise and the building is always shaking. The construction company starts super early at 7 a.m., waking them up. Sometimes even as early as 5 a.m., and they cannot go back to sleep. The noise lasts for a very long time until nighttime. Why are we building a jail in this beautiful Chinatown community? They don't like it. They do not want the jail. They want more affordable housing. Thank you so much.
Okay, now it works. Thank you. Good afternoon, Councilwoman, and thank you for letting me testify today. My name is Judy Lay, and I work with the Immigrant Social Services as their Community Engagement Manager. We provide after-school programs for first and second generation working class immigrant families in the Lower East Side and Chinatown, and we also host events and programming for seniors living at Chong Park. And Chong Park is the site right next to the old Manhattan Detention Center. And as Mei Ling described earlier, their lives have been affected greatly for the past couple years. So I've been working at ISS for almost a year, and one of my first assignments was to translate for the New York Times reporter who came after the demolition that caused the cracked wall inside the seniors building. And this was almost exactly a year ago. When we interviewed the seniors about how they felt about what happened, they shared that they feel overlooked and they feel neglected. They constantly express their fear, anxiety, and concern for their aging health due to the ongoing noise and vibration caused by the demolition work. And now that it's all done, they're afraid of what's to come when we continue to build a mega jail next to their home. They don't deserve a mega jail in their backyard. They deserve a safe community where they can live out the rest of their lives. They deserve peace. We urge the committee to refocus their efforts, discard the idea of building a mega jail, and build housing for those in need instead. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Councilwoman. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Vic Lee, and I'm the Executive Director of Welcome to Chinatown. Some of the, Judy, who has spoken about some of the unbearable construction that the seniors have been facing, those just represent a small fraction of the complaints that our organization has fielded from both residents, small businesses, those that are visiting the community. What I really want to focus on during my testimony is the cost overruns of the borough-based jail program. We are a nonprofit that has worked with city contracts, and from my personal experience, we have strict reporting deadlines, as well as there's zero tolerance for cost overruns with our contracts with the city. And I want to ask why this project has been allowed to balloon 79% from $8.7 billion to $15.6 billion, with no little accountability from DOC and DDC. So this budget overall ignores the economic realities that will push costs even higher. On top of there's currently a 5-year delay with no contingency plan for Rikers 2027 as their 2027 closure looms. Overall, there's been a lack of transparency and little responses to why we continue to pour billions into incarceration instead of the critical social services, education, and economic development. We really believe that there's still opportunities to course correct, especially looking at the size and scope of the Manhattan Borough-based jail program, given that that contract has not yet been signed. The Manhattan jail is going to be one of the most expensive buildings in Lower Manhattan at a staggering $4 billion, just on the structure of the jail, not on the services, rehabilitation, and education that actually make for safer communities. This just isn't an investment in economic growth, nor the opportunity to create pathways for the underserved communities. So I ask that the committee imagine if those funds were directed towards affordable housing, mental health services, and job training, all of the solutions that those previous that were giving testimony, those are great examples of programs. And last is I really urge that the council have the courage to rethink the existing plan by reassessing the size and scope of the Manhattan Borough-based jail program while still meeting City Council's criminal justice reform goals. Thank you.
Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Counsel. I'm the CEO at the Charles B. Wong Community Health Center. We provide medical care to 65,000 New Yorkers every year. Our mission is to care for all, regardless of income, insurance, language barrier, any other barrier. Most of our patients are low income, non-English speaking, and many are uninsured. My comments are about execution. Our oldest site is 125 Walker Street, which touches the jail site, same building as many of the senior citizens that were mentioned earlier. 10,000 patients get their health care here every year, especially pediatrics and dental. In 2023, the building conditions got significantly worse. There were leaks, there was water damage, it affected many exam rooms and waiting areas, while the construction noise and vibrations disrupt. Imagine getting a shot while there's jackhammering, that kind of thing. We had to make the difficult step to relocate pediatric services at our own cost while trying to fix or cover up the damage. But this reduced our capacity to serve patients with 10,000 fewer visits and a financial loss of over $2 million. So despite requesting on-site monitoring for noise, air, vibrations since 2023, those requests were ignored with support of groups like NUBC and Welcome to Chinatown and many local officials. Monitoring was eventually installed on the same block, but still not on the floor where we deliver care. We have made fixes to the damaged areas, mostly cosmetic, again, at our own cost, in order to expedite resuming healthcare services. But we've been told that those expenses and lost revenues are not eligible for claims or reimbursement without a clear explanation. The purpose really of my testimony is to highlight the negative health impact that the project has already caused and the potential for further damage if the services must relocate again in the future. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for that. I'm sorry to hear about all of the construction inconveniences, and I'm happy that at least you're reaching out to your local elected officials for help in remediating some of those concerns, wherever possible. But because I agree that you should not be impacted negatively by the construction we should be taking whatever, measures we need to ensure that your lives are not disturbed. Thank you so much for coming and testifying today.
She just walked in.
Okay. Our next panel is Tammy Meltzer, Jennifer Parrish, Alicia Thomas, King Downing, Gordon Lee, Sharon Brown, and Christopher Leon Johnson. All right, I'm just making sure that everybody's here. Tammy? Okay. Jennifer? Alicia Thomas? Okay. King, Gordon, Sharon, and Christopher. Okay. All right. I think that Tammy was going to start, right?
As you wish.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is Tammy Meltzer. I'm chair of Manhattan Community Board 1. Therefore, I'm chair of the area where this new jail is proposed to be built. We have egregious numbers of resolutions and concerns that have been brought to City Hall with nary an answer for the most part. There were working groups set up with no information given, no input to the contract, no conversations as promised by City Hall. The original budget was $8.3 billion. We are currently at this day looking at $16 billion. That alone should be egregious and a concern for where the ceiling could be on this. But I want to bring back some really salient points. As far as we understand, none of the findings of the Littman 2.0 Commission have been reflected in this contract. A group that was meant to oversee this entire process, we have no understanding of the connection between the contract and the commission. And to our understanding, there is actually a disconnect between the two. Part of that comes with the fact that we were promised back in 2019 that there would be robust programming that would lower the jail populations. And therefore, the building that is being squished, a hippopotamus-sized jail being squished into a mouse footprint in Chinatown, would be more as contextual as it could possibly be, and they would lower the height and density and bulk to try and fit into said mousetrap. However, the hippopotamus has continued to grow and grow and grow, and so is the budget for this. And yet, none of the findings of the Littman Commission, none of the programming that were for justice reform that we all supported and begged City Hall for, have done anything to reduce the population. So we have zero faith that this will not be a repeat of Rikers, and that once this building is built, there is no faith. The budgets have blossomed and bloomed, the populations have bloomed, and there has been nary an oversight. The connections that were given with the community have not been had. There's not been a working group meeting in over 2 years, and I've been chair the whole time, and so I can tell you there's not been a meeting, right? The lack of public comment, review, input, and City Hall proceeding on with no ceiling for programs, people, or the city's public dollars is egregious. Before this contract is signed, please, let's have a great public discussion and understanding. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us. My name is King Downing. I'm the director of the American Friends Service Committee's Healing Justice Program for New York and New Jersey. We're an advocacy group. I'm a lawyer, but I'm really here as a member of the Close Rikers campaign. And I want to, a lot of people gave data and statistics, but I just want to tell a story. Years ago, so far back that Wendell Foster was a city council person, I ran a GED program in El Barrio. At that time, half the students that I was working with, half the students were not graduating from high school on time. And so the overflow was coming to us. My youth and I testified right here, all those many years back, for money for schools and money for summer youth employment programs. And just like now, we're still seeing the same kind of problems. We're trying to lock our way out of the problem, just like those many, many years ago. And we're trying to lock our way out of poverty. And instead of creating opportunities, the money is going back into prisons while everything else is being cut. So where are we now? Lack of school funding, once again. Still low graduation rates, no summer youth employment jobs. And at that time, my students couldn't get the summer jobs, and guess where I found them? They found jobs in my neighborhood. They were lookouts for drug dealers. And a lot of that is still going on now. So where are we now, and how are we going to make these changes? So we want to see that the youth that I was dealing with don't find their own kids in the same boat that they were in when they all came here to testify back then. So where does it all end? We're still looking at mass incarceration. We're still looking at the policing solution and cutting away the ones that are actually making another difference. So we want to see money move from corrections to communities and restore the cuts and add some more. The more we keep doing the same thing, the more we're going to get what we get. Thank you.
Good night, people. My name is Mr. Gordon Lee, a former Nixon protester, but you can also call me God. I'm with all groups, including Close Rikers and Neighbors Together, because I want to fight for causes that nobody can live without, and I want to fight everything that everyone fears, including myself. And I was one of the newborns under the Nixon presidency of June of 23rd of 1973. Now, I also don't agree with the extra money to build more jails, like the new jail proposed in Manhattan and the plan to rezone all of Chinatown to build a 50-story jail or prison. Now, I'm not going to ask that there be, I know that jails are needed to hold people who are a threat to the community, but also, we should also try to save money for other things that will, prevent crime and drugs, including affordable food security, affordable education, childcare, mental health services, affordable health care, affordable housing, and, all of that, any basic essentials. And also, I have been hearing that Rikers Island is the largest psych ward in the country, and it's not really a jail in a way. The purpose of it, an evil purpose. Today, I'm hearing people want mentally ill people to be criminalized instead of treated, and they want, and I got the impression that mentally ill people who are accused of crimes get worse treatment than people who are truly criminals and who are normal, who have more ability to know right from wrong and more ability to control their behavior. And to me, that looks like a gross injustice. And I happen to have a mental health history, autism, elective mutism, speech problems. I sometimes read a little bit slow, and I'm some degree of mood disorders, and I also have a medical condition. Someone wouldn't survive incarceration because they're saying there's no health care in the jails. They don't allow health care. Inmates are not allowed to see their health care providers. So I was told, and so I wouldn't survive incarceration. I have sleep apnea. I rely on a breathing machine at nights.
Gordon, can you wrap up, honey? I'm sorry that we have other people waiting.
Okay, time's up?
Yeah, it was up a little while ago. I let you go over.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Parrish, and I'm the Director of Criminal Justice Advocacy at the Urban Justice Center Mental Health Project. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. And I'm here today to urge the Council to oppose excessive spending on the Department of Correction. Year after year, the city pours billions of dollars into this agency, which cannot fulfill its fundamental obligation of keeping people in its custody safe and healthy. In fact, its decades-long track record of failing to meet constitutional standards, even with years of outside oversight, has led to the possible appointment of a receiver to take control of the jails. I want to highlight for you a recent example that makes clear why funding for the department should be reduced. despite the mayor's repeated claim that solitary confinement does not exist in the jails. In October, former Correctional Health Services social worker Justina Rizwinski revealed that not only does solitary confinement in the jails exist, but that it's being used in the most egregious ways, notably in the specialized mental health units where people with the most serious mental health needs are housed. She documented, and the CHS leadership confirmed, a practice referred to as deadlocking, in which correction officers lock people with mental health concerns. These are people with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder, in their cells 24 hours a day for weeks or even months on end. And correction officers engaged in this practice despite CHS staff advocating for these individuals to be released, despite it resulting in those individuals not receiving medication, and despite them becoming more symptomatic as they mentally decompensated in the torturous environment of solitary confinement. And this was not one egregious incident, but a practice that's been going on for years, despite regulations against it. In fact, the Board of Corrections outlawed placing people with serious mental illness in solitary back in 2015. Sorry, if I could just have a moment. But that's what New York's tax dollars are funding: cruel and inhumane treatment of people with mental health needs. That must end. We can use that funding for actual treatment of people with serious mental health needs in the community to provide them with housing, mental health supports, and other services that promote recovery. And we have that funding. Simply by eliminating the department's uniformed vacancies, we could save more than $149 million. That would allow for funding for justice-involved supportive housing, intensive mobile treatment, forensic assertive community treatment teams, crisis respite centers, ATI, and reentry programs. It would also allow us to fully fund the Board of Corrections. You heard them say that they can't even complete their investigation of this deadlocking practice until June because they simply don't have the funds, despite it being revealed at the October meeting. So please use the money that's currently in the DOC budget for these other important priorities.
Hello, Chair Alea. Thanks for hosting this, and thanks for Sanders hosting this too. I know she's not here, but hope she's doing well. But I'm here to advocate for the restoration of funding for $3 million back into Safe Horizon. I'm calling for restoration and to keep on getting funding from the City Council. That was wrong of how the Speaker and the Mayor defunded Safe Horizon. They do a lot of great work for the city, especially in the court system and the jail system. Now, I'm calling on the City Council to allocate $3.7 million into various sexual, $3.7 million. This is to the Speaker, Adrian Adams, $3.7 million into any sexual assault, domestic violence assault organization that Sandy Nurse has want to allocate that money to, because she was sexually assaulted in Rikers like last year. I mean, that's sad. I know a lot of people don't like her, but no woman should be sexually assaulted. While at the same time, we just heard Benny Biasco crying for the past hour about what his officers been going through, but he have not said not one thing about Sandy Nurse being sexually assaulted in jail. He would say, oh, she just got slapped in the butt, but it didn't matter. Like, she still got sexually assaulted. She should have never been sexually assaulted. Yeah, correctional has been sexually assaulted in jail too, but she been assaulted too. Just like he want to complain that how they matter all the time, they do matter. But at the same time, Sandy Nurse matters too. So Benny Biasco should make a statement saying that he condemned about his inmates, because I have a big feeling that he sent that off to try to show to the City Council, like, oh, this is what the corrections officers go through. You guys don't know, so I'm gonna get one of these guys to sexually assault one of your council members to show what we go through. So until Benny Biasco, the council, the corrections union condemns Sandy Nurse, condemns the situation that Sandy Nurse ever been through, I have a big feeling he set that over with his members in the union, because that union is corrupt, really corrupt. You know, a lot of people, to keep it real, nobody's going to really give a shit about what these correctionals go through. These COs go through. They won't care what these COs go through. I care what they go through, but to keep it real, you know, you guys go through a lot of things. Other people go through a lot of things. You gotta be fair with them. You gotta be real fair. Until, like I said, you condemn Mr. Garcia for sexual assault of setting nurse and say, look, we stand with setting nurse. She didn't have to go through that. Nobody's going to care. Remember, she the chair of the corrections committee. She the chair of this committee. I know you're here today. I know she's not here, but she the chair. She had the right to say what money goes to what. Yeah. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Some of my language, but I mean,
no, I appreciate it. Thank you, Christopher.
No problem.
Sharon, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Sharon Brown. Before I get started, remember Israel, release the hostages, let Yahweh's people go. Okay, we need Bible-based programs to help people out. Some things that come out of the church, the synagogue, they usually have programs and things to help people to restart their lives, to get their lives back on track. There's not enough success rate in the programs that they're using, so I think they should try something that works. Even psychiatrists, psychologists, and the like note that there is a benefit with biblical or people going to church and doing things from the church. Their lives are different. And many people you talk to, whether it be drug abuse or addiction, whatever it is, they say dealing in the church, they found themselves on a different path, they got better. If you called people like that who went into church programs and things like that, you'll find a higher success rate than the success rates that you find here. So Rikers Island must be closed ASAP now. There's even someone on the dais whose brother was stabbed or something like that. I don't remember exactly who it was. What's happening at Rikers is deplorable, and it's dangerous, and the legal aid should be defunded, or at least their funding should be withheld or something, because they're standing by passively as things like this are happening to their clients. They can't see health care and things like that. And the legal aid are not filing motions and things. They have the leeway to file motions, habeas corpus, to try to get them out immediately. A habeas corpus gets them out. There's so many different things that the legal aid can do, and yet they sit and complain and they don't do anything. If you shake up their funding or something, you threaten to take away their funding, maybe they'll fight for them. But close Rikers now, defund Rikers.
Thank you so much, Sharon.
You're welcome.
Thank you all for your testimony today. We are going to move to Zoom. If there is anyone that we inadvertently missed who wishes to testify in person, please see a sergeant and fill out a witness slip. Okay. All right. Seeing no one, then we will move on to Zoom. We will be hearing from Zachary Katz Nelson, Hannah Mae Powers, Corinne Conrad Santiago, Kelly Grace Price, Daniel Gerard, Roy Waterman, and Dr. Vanda Seward. Zachary?
You may begin.
Zachary, are you there? Okay, he's not on the Zoom. All right, we're moving on to Hannah Mae Powers.
You may begin.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Hannah Mae Powers, and I'm here on behalf of the Brooklyn Borough President, Antonio Reynoso, to call attention to the ways in which the mayor's budget fundamentally undermines safety and the mandate to close Rikers Island. The DOC is in desperate need of right-sizing. The city could save $149.6 million without a single layoff just by eliminating uniform vacancies. As of February 27th, the ratio of uniformed correctional officers to detained persons on Rikers Island was 0.8 correctional officers to one detained person. This is vastly higher than the national average of one correctional officer per 3.6 incarcerated people. There's an issue with both culture and practice at the DOC, which continues to ignore the abuse of its unlimited sick time system. Overall, the DOC is set to receive a 9.2% budget increase over last fiscal year. This increase comes as agencies that seek to address the root causes of incarceration are facing cuts. As of March 2nd, there were 6,866 New Yorkers detained on Rikers. This is drastically higher than the 4,160 person population needed to transition the population to the borough-based jails. Mayor Adams is again attempting to cut some of the most critical programs keeping New Yorkers out of jail. Unless the funding is restored, ATI programs are slated to lose $14.4 million. Stable housing is also one of the most impactful ways to address incarceration. And we know that homeless and housing insecure individuals are drastically overrepresented in the criminal legal system. Though the JISH program expanded in 2019, the expansion has largely remained stagnant due to a lack of provider funding. The FY26 budget must include expanded funding for JISH. Another agency facing budget cuts is the Board of Corrections, a critical body that helps keep people safe. This proposed budget cut would lead to a 5% decrease in funds for this body. The city can and must do better for thousands of people impacted by incarceration every day. We know that social determinants of health, such as safe and dignified housing, stable employment, food security.
Your time
quality
has expired.
education-
Thank you.
Thank you.
Corinne Conrad Santiago.
You may begin.
All right, Corinne doesn't seem to be on. Kelly Grace Price.
You may begin.
Hi, it's Kelly Grace Price from Close Rosie's. It's the end of the day and I'll be quick. Please excuse my very low broadband. I'm going to keep it on just audio only. The first thing I'd like to address is this notion that everybody on Rikers is the worst of the worst. I want to be very clear. As of today, there are 427 women, girls, trans, or intersex people held on the Rose M. Singer Center. Looking down the list of top charges that they're held for, 25% of these women, girls, or trans, intersex, or gender nonconforming people are being held on misdemeanors. If you look across the hall and you look at what the men are being held on, less than 3% of the total charges that they're held on, top charge, are misdemeanors. So still we have this gross inequity. Every year I come to this hearing and I testify about the same thing. Women are being over-criminalized in this town. No one seems to be doing anything about it, regardless of all the gender-informed ATI programs floating around out there. We're still hauling people in there for stupid things like petty larceny. One woman is in there for trespassing. There are 9 people in there on fugitive warrants. Okay, we get that. But why are people in there on subway jumping? Yes, there is a 70-year-old woman currently sitting on the Rose M. Singer Center accused of turnstile jumping, and she was charged with the forged instrument. I'm going to quickly move to the things that I always talk about in this hearing, if you don't mind. We definitely need parity with the Board of Correction and the Department of Correction. We ask for that every year. Please emphasize the Board of Corrections needs. We have not had a PREA audit. We just had a hearing where Councilwoman
Your
Sandy
time has
Nurse,
expired. Thank you.
asked about why sexual assault wasn't being addressed because we don't have anyone on the Board of Correction to audit PREA. I'll turn in my written comments. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for going over.
No worries, Kelly. Thank you so much. We're moving on to Daniel Gerard.
You may begin.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker Ayala and committee members. My name is Danielle Gerard. I'm a senior staff attorney at Children's Rights. We are a national organization that advocates on behalf of youth and state systems here in the city on behalf of young adults on Rikers. We cannot incarcerate our way to public health and safety. We must invest in our communities, not continue to throw money at the humanitarian disaster that is Rikers Island. We urge this committee and the council to cut the Department of Correction proposed $2.87 billion budget and redistribute funding to programs that actually work to improve public safety. If the city eliminated the more than 1,100 current vacant positions for uniformed correction officers, we could save almost $150 million next year alone to reinvest in the programs and services recommended in the written testimony I filed with you yesterday. This savings will also help the city close Rikers by the August 2027 deadline in accordance with the law. And although the department testified that they need more staff, they already have approximately as many staff as incarcerated persons. Absenteeism and lack of appropriate training are what keep posts unfilled, medical appointments missed, and violence escalating. We call on the council to ensure our communities have adequate, supportive, and affordable housing and mental health services before New Yorkers interact with the criminal legal system. This is especially critical for our children and youth. Evidence shows that incarceration reduces youth success in education and employment, leads to lasting damage to their health and well-being, and that alternatives to incarceration lead to better outcomes for them, all while costing far less than incarceration. Underfunding alternatives to confinement and proven services makes no sense morally, ethically, or fiscally, especially in the face of the federal government's rampage against the most vulnerable among us. We look to the City Council to do right by all New Yorkers Thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you so much. We will now be moving on to Roy Waterman.
You may begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Speaker. I'm sorry. The technical Deputy Speaker Ayala, members of the Committee of Criminal Justice. My name is Roy Waterman. I am the program coordinator for the Arches Program and Youth Justice Initiative Division at Good Shepherd Services. Good Shepherd Services is a provider of community-based youth justice programs, a family enrichment center known as The Crib, partnerships in Brooklyn, Cure Violence in the Bronx, so we're throughout New York City. Just want to thank you for advocating for the reinstatement of the Next Step program, which was abruptly brought to an end by the Department of Probation over a year and a half ago with short notice. Youth need educational and vocational opportunities, but they also need positive adult relationships and mentoring programs like Next Steps. Many youths will never make it to an educational and vocational opportunity without the assistance of credible messengers. At a time when young people are in crisis and under attack, we should be removing services from the youth programming, and we need the city to invest in young people and communities to support them. I want to thank the Department of Probation for reinstating AIM Light program known as non-ATP and acknowledging the value of connecting every high-risk young person ages 13 to 18. Regarding the pending request for proposals for AIM Work Plus programs, while we have heard from the DOP that these contracts will be extended for one more year, the RFPs will be released next year. Providers want to ensure that the funding for the RFPs are included in the fiscal 2026 fiscal budget. As a part of the Youth Justice Coalition, a group of 20 DOP contractors, Good Shepherd signed a letter which sent to Commissioner Holmes expressing a concern regarding the Department of Probation's request for information and documentation for several weeks. We're committed to providing the department with information that demonstrates the value and impact of vital programming in the community. However,
Your time has expired. Thank you.
Consideration provides the nature required to ensure. We look forward to continue to work with the council and DOP as data needs. Thank you again for this testimony today.
Thank you so much. I love Good Shepherd.
Thank you.
Dr. Vonda Seward.
You may begin.
Okay, seems like she's no longer on Zoom. So with that, we have no one left to testify. Thank you all so much, and with that, this hearing is concluded.